Knowing what you know now, having gone through
Mhm.
lots of different iterations on the financing, what would you do differently if you could go back to 2012 as it relates to specifically raising money?
Well, I mean, I think I now run another company that's in the cybersecurity space. We just closed a Series A. It was $24 million in December. I mean, in some ways, being able to do this a little bit differently now, I would say that 2012 and 2020, 2021 are very different times to raise capital. The maturity of the market is very different. I was incredibly naive across the board, right? So I didn't really understand um, what kind of signal certain kinds of investors sent. I didn't really understand the
Like, give me
terms
an example
fully that we were kind of getting
of a
to.
signal that an investor might send to you today that you now can listen for. You've got the signal and the noise on that, whereas when you were 20, you didn't know.
I think the greatest investors in the world know that the reputation is the most valuable asset that they hold, right? So a lot of investors put a lot of terms, legal terms, into investment documents, right, to protect themselves. Something called liquidation preference, which is who gets paid out first and how much they get paid out. There's all these different terms that exist. And I think what you'll find is, in some ways, it's the opposite of what people think. People think about like the best investors in the world. They think they're the biggest sharks. They're the toughest to negotiate with, whatever. I actually think that it's the opposite. I think that they actually have the cleanest term sheets, the cleanest terms overall, because they know that what they're trading on is reputation. And what I learned in my first company was, a lot of times these terms are not as clean as you would hope because, maybe the company isn't as good as it needs to be. Maybe the investors aren't as good as it. Like the market has an interesting way of sorting that matching process out. And when you don't really know what you're doing, you're kind of figuring that out. I would also argue that the Canadian ecosystem is actually quite different than the American ecosystem in terms of raising capital. I'm happy to kind of expound on that. But like it was much less mature than the American system. But I didn't go through, for example, an incubator. I didn't go through a Y Combinator or a Techstars or one of these different types of programs where you're really kind of de-risking some of those things by saying, hey, we have a reputation around this. Don't screw our companies. It was just little old me trying to put together some money.
Got it.